Tourists from all over the world flock to see some of the most iconic buildings. However, you'll be shocked to hear that some of the world's most recognizable architectural wonders nearly didn't make it past the planning stage. Whether hindered by financial crises, political opposition, or impractical designs, these structures faced formidable obstacles. But against the odds, they were completed, and today they define their respective cities and cultures. From the White House to the Eiffel Tower, in today's video, we look at these iconic structures that were nearly never built. Kicking off today's video with the Parthenon in Athens. Today, the Parthenon stands as a symbol of ancient Greece's glory. However, it almost didn't rise from the ruins of war. After the Persians sacked Athens in 480 BC, much of the Acropolis was left in devastation. Pericles, a statesman, proposed rebuilding the Acropolis to showcase the city's strength and cultural superiority. However, many Athenians opposed the costly endeavour, fearing it would drain the city's resources at a time when it was still recovering from years of conflict. Pericles' vision eventually won out, and construction began in 447 BCE under the direction of architects Ictinus and Callicrates, with Phidias overseeing the decorative sculptures. Remarkably, the Parthenon was completed in just over 15 years, despite the political opposition and economic strain. It quickly became a symbol of Athenian democracy, culture, and resilience. Though it has suffered damage over the centuries, the Parthenon still stands as a monumental testament to the achievements of ancient Greece. But up next on the list, we have New York's Guggenheim Museum. This museum, designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, is one of the most famous art museums in the world, known for its unique spiraling design. However, when Wright first proposed the concept in the 1940s, it was met with widespread skepticism. Many critics and patrons argued that the building's radical form would overshadow the art housed inside it, making it impractical as a museum. Wright himself faced opposition from within the Guggenheim Foundation, with museum founder Solomon Guggenheim expressing doubts about the feasibility of the design. That wasn't the only challenge, however, as political infighting and financial struggles delayed construction for years. The project was only revived after Solomon Guggenheim's death, and even then, Wright's design was heavily debated. Construction finally began in 1956, and though Wright died before the museum's completion in 1959 today, the building stands as one of his most iconic works. Its radical form has become an integral part of the New York City cultural landscape, drawing millions of visitors each year. But traveling across to the US's West Coast, we have the iconic Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. This prominent landmark is today considered an engineering marvel, but in the 1920s, when the project was first proposed, many believed it was impossible. Spanning the treacherous waters of San Francisco Bay, the bridge faced numerous engineering challenges due to the area's strong currents, frequent fog, and seismic activity. Many experts doubted whether a suspension bridge could withstand the harsh conditions. Additionally, military officials feared the bridge would obstruct naval operations, and environmentalists worried about the impact on the bay's ecosystem. Despite the concerns, engineer Joseph Strauss pushed forward with his ambitious plan. Securing funding during the Great Depression was no easy task, but Strauss and his team were able to raise the necessary capital through a combination of government bonds and private investments. Construction began in 1933, and after 4 years of intense labor, the Golden Gate Bridge opened in 1937. Today, it stands as one of the most iconic bridges in the world, recognized for both its beauty and its engineering ingenuity. It's hard to imagine this piece of Californian architecture almost never came to fruition, but this next building's early history is equally fascinating. We're talking about one of the most iconic structures in Catholic history, St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City. As one of the largest and most important churches in the world, St. Peter's Basilica is the centerpiece of the Vatican. However, its construction was fraught with controversy, delays, and financial difficulties. Pope Julius II commissioned the rebuilding of the basilica in 1506, intending to create a monumental church that would symbolize the power of the Catholic Church. However, the enormous cost of the project soon became a point of contention, especially as the church turned to the sale of indulgences to fund the construction. The sale of indulgences, A practice where people could pay money to reduce the time their souls would spend in purgatory, was widely criticized and even sparked Martin Luther's Reformation. Additionally, disagreements between architects over the design led to frequent changes in direction, with Michelangelo ultimately taking over the project in the 1540s. Despite these challenges, St. Peter's Basilica was completed in 1626, more than 120 years after it began. Today, it's one of the most magnificent examples of Renaissance architecture. But while St. Peter's Basilica has become an icon, one of the most important buildings in US history, the White House, was almost never built today. The White House stands as an enduring symbol of American democracy. However, it faced a series of daunting challenges before it became the residence of the US president. Designed by Irish architect James Hoban in the late 18th century, the construction of the White House was plagued by financial difficulties, slow material deliveries, and labor shortages. The young United States lacked the resources and infrastructure to complete such an ambitious project efficiently, leading to frequent delays. The most devastating setback occurred during the War of 1812, when British troops set fire to the White House, nearly destroying it. The building was gutted, and many wondered if it could ever be fully restored. However, Hoban returned to oversee the rebuilding process, and the White House was reconstructed almost exactly as it had been originally designed. Despite these early struggles, the White House now stands as one of the most recognizable buildings in the world, embodying the resilience of the American spirit. From one icon to another. Next, we have one of the most recognizable buildings, the Eiffel Tower. Today, this building stands as a symbol of Paris and is one of the most visited monuments in the world. But did you know that the Eiffel Tower almost never came to fruition? Initially designed by Gustave Eiffel for the 1889 World's Fair, the tower faced intense opposition from some of France's most prominent artists and intellectuals. A public petition denounced the tower as a monstrous addition to the city, claiming it would ruin the beauty of Paris. Financial troubles also threatened the project, as Eiffel struggled to secure funding to complete the structure. Despite the backlash and challenges, Eiffel forged ahead. Construction began in 1887, and 2 years later, the tower was completed on time for the fair. Interestingly, the Eiffel Tower was intended to be a temporary structure slated for demolition after 20 years. But its use as a radio transmission tower, coupled with its growing status as a beloved landmark, ensured its survival. Today, it stands as an enduring icon of French culture and engineering prowess. Up next, we have the Sydney Opera House. The Sydney Opera House is one of the world's most unique architectural masterpieces, but its construction was a long and difficult process. In 1957, Danish architect Jørn Utzon won an international competition to design the Opera House, but his futuristic vision came with significant challenges. The curved, sail-like roof design was unlike anything that had been attempted before, and the engineers struggled to bring the concept to life. The project's initial budget of $7 million spiraled out of control, eventually ballooning to over $100 million. Construction delays dragged on for over a decade, and political pressure mounted. Utzon was heavily criticized, and in 1966 he resigned from the project entirely, disheartened by the ongoing disputes and lack of government support. Despite these setbacks, the building was finally completed in 1973, and today it is recognized as one of the great architectural achievements of the 20th century. Utzon never returned to Australia to see his finished work, but his vision remains an integral part of Sydney's cultural landscape. Moving on, we have another iconic French building that was almost never built. We're talking about the Palace of Versailles. This palace, with its gilded halls and manicured gardens, is a symbol of French monarchy and extravagance, but it nearly didn't reach its current form. Originally built as a modest hunting lodge for King Louis XIII, the palace was expanded under his son, Louis XIV, who wanted to turn it into the seat of his absolute power. The ambitious project required immense resources, and France was already financially stretched by wars and the construction of other royal residences. The sheer scale of the project, which involved relocating the French court to Versailles and building vast new wings and gardens, led to frequent delays and financial strain. Many in the French nobility opposed the project, seeing it as an unnecessary display of Louis XIV's vanity. However, Louis was determined, and the palace was completed in stages over several decades. Versailles became the political centre of France until the French Revolution and remains a symbol of royal excess and artistic achievement. But finally, for this video, we have another New York landmark. The Chrysler Building is a shining example of Art Deco architecture, and it was the tallest building in the world for a brief moment. However, its journey to the top of the New York skyline was anything but smooth. Designed by William Van Alen, the building was commissioned by automobile magnate Walter Chrysler in the late 1920s, just as New York was caught up in a race to build the tallest skyscraper. However, financial and legal troubles nearly derailed the project. Van Alen's former business partner accused him of financial mismanagement, causing backers to withdraw their support. Worse, the 1929 stock market crash threw the city's economy into chaos. Despite these obstacles, Van Alen pressed forward and famously added a 185-foot spire to the top of the Chrysler Building in secret, securing its title as the world's tallest building. This title lasted only for 11 months, until the completion of the Empire State Building in 1931. Today, the Chrysler Building remains an iconic part of the New York City skyline. So what do you think of these iconic buildings that were almost never built? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching.